Welcome to Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. My name is Brandon Bornancin, a serial salesperson and entrepreneur, and I'm sitting down with the world's best sales experts to share their top secrets to sales success. Hello and welcome to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. And I'm thrilled, honored, humbled, and grateful to have with me today Paul Smith. Paul is one of the world's leading experts in sales and business storytelling. He's in Inc. magazine's top 100 leadership speakers of 2018, a storytelling coach, and best-selling author of 3 books, Sell with the Story, Parenting with the Story, and Lead with the Story. Paul has interviewed over 400 CEOs and executives on their top secrets. Paul is also a former consultant at Accenture and former executive, 20-year veteran of the Procter & Gamble Company. Additionally, his work in research on the effectiveness on storytelling has been featured in publications like the Wall Street Journal, Inc. magazine, Time, Forbes, Fast Company, the Washington Post. He's everywhere. Paul, thank you so much for joining us today. We are thrilled to have you.
You're very welcome. It's great to be here.
So we've got a lot to cover because I don't get to interview a lot of people that have interviewed a lot of top executives, a lot of top sales leaders and CEOs. So I am like super ecstatic about what we can learn from you with your top sales secrets. But the audience, just to preface the conversation, the audience is interested in 2 main things. Number 1, sales secrets from the top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. What is your top sales secret? If you had to start back in time when you got into selling, what would you tell yourself that would maximize your sales success? If you hired a bunch of people and you could write down one secret on one piece of paper and that's all you had to give them, what would you write down to what is their top secret to maximize their sales success? And we're thrilled to go over that with you. And I know you've got a lot to say there, which is super exciting. But even before then, the audience is dying to know the second thing. Who is Paul Smith? We've got this best-selling author, keynote speaker, business storytelling guru, and leadership trainer who's interviewed hundreds of executives and CEOs. Where did you come from, man? What is your background? How'd you get started with your career at P&G and Accenture, and then go off and decide to interview all these executives? And what are the successes and failures in micro sales secrets that you've learned from hundreds of interviews, everything that you've learned throughout your career, going from corporate at P&G and Accenture to now running your podcasts? You've got 3 podcasts, 3 best-selling books, Sell with a Story, Lead with a Story, Parenting with a Story. We've got a lot to cover on this episode. So why don't you first take us back to introducing yourself? Who is Paul Smith, the game changer?
Yes, there's a lot in there. I'll do my best to unpack it. So, the first 20 years of my career is probably unremarkable. It sounds like a lot of other people. I studied economics in undergrad. I got an MBA. I spent a couple of years as a consultant, like you said, but spent most of my career at Procter & Gamble. So about 20 years there, doing some of it was in finance and accounting. Most of it was in consumer research. But again, a pretty typical corporate career path. And at some point along the way, about 15 years into that, I just realized, I like my job, but I don't love my job. And that was a problem because, I was in my mid 40s at the time. And I thought, I've got another 15 or 20 years of doing this.
That's tough. That's a tough thing to feel.
Yeah. And if you're not loving it every day, that's not a good feeling. So like I said, it was good. I liked it, but I just didn't love it. So I figured out what I did love. I loved speaking in front of audiences and teaching people. So I love being a speaker and a trainer. And I got like 4 or 5 days a year at P&G that I got to do that, but that's it.
I was about to say, how did you figure out that you loved that? Because you were in economics and finance, how does that go into speaking and training?
Yeah, well, who knows? Human beings are complex and confusing, and there are all kinds of different things that we like and love and hate. And, 3 or 4 or 5 days a year, every executive at P&G's got to go teach a day at new hire training college or give a speech at the company annual meeting or something. And most people like just hate that. It's like pulling teeth, and they regret having to even go do it. But I loved that. Those were my 4 or 5 favorite days a year. And the other, 360 days a year were like, meh. So I figured out just from doing it that I love doing that. And
that's incredible that you were able to like see that and feel that was like what you love.
Yeah, and I'm sure there's some people that never figure out what they really love. So I got lucky there that I found it. But there's no job at any company, at most companies, there's no full-time job of doing that. The only way to do that is to go do that at a bunch of companies, as a professional speaker and trainer. And if you look around, the only people that get to do that are people who have written, a best-selling book and get invited to go do that. So I thought, well, geez, I guess I got to write a book. If I want to go do that.
That's awesome.
And I tried to like pilot my way there by partnering with a couple other guys whose name you might recognize. It's Chip and Dan Heath. So they wrote the book Made to Stick back in 2007 or 8 or something.
My background's in marketing, so I read that book and studied that like crazy.
Yeah. So I read it back about that time, loved it, used it in part of the training classes I was teaching at P&G, and ended up contacting them and saying, hey, I told them basically what I just told you. And I said, I'd kind of like to try teaching a training class based on the content in your book. I've got a bunch of real world examples, a bunch of real stories to put in it. The theory works. I think we could create something together. And long story short, I became the first licensed trainer for the content in that book.
Wow. So, you pitched them on basically wanting to license their content.
Yes. So, I wanted to be a trainer of that content, right?
Because you believed in it so much.
Yes. And because I wanted, again, to try my way into this new career that I thought I would love. Right. So they agreed. And 3 or 4, 5, 6 times that year, I took a vacation day from P&G and I went and taught a training class to some other company.
So cool. So you did this while you were also working.
Yeah. So I had to take a vacation day to go do that. Well, so the end of the year came. I really loved it. They actually at the same time offered, they said, how about, in addition to that, how about we co-author a book together? It'll be essentially huge. Made to Stick, a practical guide. So the two of them and me, we were going to co-author a book together. I got about halfway through writing my half of that book. Again, this is all kind of on the side while I was still working at P&G. At the end of the year in December, I had a phone call with them to kind of assess how the year went. And the 2 worst things that could have happened to me happened on that phone call. The first thing was they said, hey, that book that we said we were going to write together? Well, we don't have time to do that because we're both got full-time jobs and we're working on our next book, and we can't go through with that. So that didn't work out. And even though I'd already written my half of the book. And they said, and also this training thing, it's going great. In fact, we want it to go full-time, right? Okay. But you can't do that if you've got a full-time job. So we've hired a training company that's going to take over and go big time.
No.
So literally in that one phone call, I got fired from my 2, best ideas for launching my new career.
Your dream job to get into this dream industry, dream venture shot in
all crashed in 20 minutes, right? So I spent about a month moping around about that. And then in January,
because you hit the failure and you gotta you gotta let that resonate and be like, damn, what do I do next, right?
So I mean, I moped around for a month, and then I said, they're nice guys, but I don't need them. I mean, I can do this on my own. So I started with my half of the book that I'd written, and I looked through it, and I realized basically what I had written was a bunch of stories. And that's when it occurred to me, that's really the thing that I'm good at. I'm good at finding, crafting, and telling compelling stories. And so I said, I'll just write a whole book about that one topic.
Wow.
Not all the other stuff that we were going to write a book about together, but just that one. So I did. I spent the next 2.5 years working on a book about storytelling. It became Lead with a Story, but I still had my full-time job because I wasn't brave enough to just quit and see if it would work, because most books are a phenomenal failure, and hopefully yours won't be, but it's not a high success rate business, right? So I waited until it got published, and then I kind of waited to see what would happen. And I think I picked a good topic. I think the book's decent, and it did better than I expected. I think it's in its 11th or 12th printing now, and it's in 7 or 8 languages around the world. And so
Oh yeah.
I pretty quickly started getting phone calls to go do the kind of thing that I wanted to go do. And that's what gave me the courage to finally, quit my full-time job and do this for a living. And about that time, I got my second book contract, and then the third one. And so,
Holy cow,
things started working out right.
Amazing.
Which is, again, why I quit.
So when you tell, just so the audience is aware, because they may have not read the book, when you say story, how do you define story? Like, what does that mean? What is this?
Yeah.
Story?
So when I say story, and that's a great question, because people mean all kinds of things by the word story and storytelling today. When I say story, I actually mean a real story, a narrative about something that happened to someone, right? There's a time, a place, a main character. That main character is facing some kind of an opportunity or a challenge, and things happen, and it resolves themselves in the end with either a success or a failure, as opposed to, some people call a great sales pitch a good story. Well, it might be a good story, but it's probably just a good sales pitch, or a great speech, or a great memo that you wrote, or a great email, or you can have, or a television advertisement. You can have a great ad that
infomercial.
Yeah, all those things aren't necessarily stories. So I teach people how to craft real stories, and you can use real stories in all those things: in a speech, in an advertisement, in a memo, in a presentation. But you can do all those things without stories too. And my contention is that all those things will be more effective if they include stories in them than if you don't have stories in them.
Wow. And how did that come about? So I guess I've got 2 questions from this experience, this amazing experience. Number one, was it hard to sell the 2 authors of Made to Stick to, like, if you came to me and I was this famous author and there's this guy who's in economics and finance at P&G out of, now I know you're in Ohio. We're from Columbus, Ohio, and Newark, New Jersey. So we love Ohio people. I don't know if you're a Buckeyes fan. Hopefully you are. Were you because you worked at P&G, like you were local to Ohio, right?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. That's huge. So you went to these guys, some guy from Ohio in economics and finance. What did you even say? Like, how did you approach these guys, pitch them this idea? I know it got shot to shambles like later on, but how do you even get in the door there?
I think I started by calling their agent. So I found the agent that books them on speaking engagements. I told him what I told them, which is what I'm about to tell you, which he then passed along. And then they called me and I got to tell them personally. But I said, look, I'm this director of consumer research at Procter & Gamble. I teach training classes on leadership and communication. I've been teaching a class, and then I read their book, and I started using some of the elements, the theory in their book, and the feedback scores I was getting on my training class went through the roof. Wow. So I'm very sold on the content of their book, and I think there's a commercial opportunity between the theories in their book and the real world examples I use to teach it to real leaders every day. And I'd like to talk to them about some kind of a collaboration. That was basically the thing that got me in the door with them and got them interested.
And I forgot to ask, a lot of the audience may have not read the book either. So what are the methodologies and strategies in the book that attracted you so much, that you applied, that maximize your success with the training? Yeah,
there were 6 things in the book, if you remember, and they summarized them with the acronym SUCCESS. SUCCES, only one S.
It's a smart acronym.
It was. So basically what they did was they evaluated ideas really throughout kind of the history of mankind and tried to pick out what are what they call the stickiest ideas, the ideas that seem to have the longest tail and the longest tenure, that people were the most successful type of ideas. And they concluded after doing the research that ideas that have these 6 criteria tend to be more sticky. Ideas that are simple, not complex, that have some element of the unexpected in them, so some surprise, that were credible, like they came from a credible source that you could believe in, that were very concrete ideas, very specific, not vague, nebulous ideas, like very specific, concrete ideas that had an emotional component in it, not just the facts, ma'am, not just rational, logical thought, but there was an emotional component. And the last one was that the ideas were communicated with a story, right? And not just in a like a bullet point list or a presentation or a memo. So simple, unexpected, credible, concrete, emotional stories. Those are the things that make ideas successful. And so it was that last one that really resonated with me, that made me go off. And I want to go deep into that one aspect of communication excellence.
Wow. And why do you think the storytelling part hit you so hard, made so much sense?
Well, probably because I realized that's what I did. When I communicate with people, I tend to tell a lot of stories. And so I realized it was something that I had at least some natural facility with. And so if I want to go create a career for myself, teaching people something, it ought to be something I know something about, right? Or that I have some natural ability in. And so of those 6 things, that was the one. And like I said, I looked back at that first half of the book that I'd already written with them, and it was essentially just a collection of stories. I didn't think that's what I was doing, but as I looked back, I realized, oh, that's what I just did. I wrote, 50 pages of stories. So those 2 things kind of led me to this is what my niche ought to be. I think I can help people really do this part better.
Yeah, and when you wrote the collection of stories, the 50 stories, like what? Like, yeah, I make my bed. like the Navy SEAL guys, he's like, make your bed every day. I forget the author's name. I love that book. But like, what were these 50 stories? Like, it's hard to come up with 50 different stories. Yeah. So how'd you do it? And
well,
what
those
was
are
that
just
about?
the ones that I was in that draft. My first book ended up with 115 stories, and I've had hundreds over the course of my 3 books now. But probably the better way to answer this is to tell you about my next book, because I literally, there's 115 different stories in my first book, and they're in 21 different categories. So like they're grouped into the types of stories that leaders need to tell. So leaders need to tell stories to help set a vision for the future, or lead change, or define the cultures and values of the organization, or inspire and motivate the team, or teach people how to do their job, or get people to be more creative and innovative, or to collaborate better with each other, right? So I had whole chapters on each of those things with 5 or 6 stories each to help leaders do those things better. And it's the same thing with my most recent book, the sales book. I mean, I found out after interviewing a bunch of salespeople and professional buyers that there's like 25 specific types of stories that I think great salespeople tell, all the way from the moment they introduce themselves to a buyer, through building rapport, that making the sales pitch, negotiating price and resolving objections, closing the sale, even service after the sale. And so there's specific types of stories in all of those that I think great salespeople tell. And so to answer your question, the simplest way is, I think I figured out the 10 most important stories I think leaders need to tell.
I love that. That's incredible. And it was in that first draft. Then you took that was like these types of stories, and then you let it into leadership, and then you let it into sales from all these interviews.
Yeah. So I literally, so I interviewed all these hundreds of people, and every time, and I'd ask them questions to elicit different stories. And then I probably, like I said, I interviewed about 400 people. I probably got 8 to 10 to 12 stories from each of them. So do the math. I've literally documented now probably 4,000 stories. So,
dude, you've got probably 2,000 different books you could write now.
Well, no, because they're not all great stories. I mean, and that's the point is, so the first thing I did was I looked at all these 4,000 stories now. Well, which ones were really good? And it was a small portion of them, right? It was a few hundred. Most of them are not that good. So maybe 1,000 of them are really good, and 3,000 are not that great. So, well, what's the difference between the ones that are great and the ones that are not? And so I studied them and tried to figure out what
a lot of science and education and learning.
And then I categorized them based on, what type of stories are great leaders and great salespeople telling. And that's what kind of gave me the list of types of stories that I think are important. But what made them great stories is what most of the books I write are about. Is how do you use the right structure in a story? How do you bring out the right emotional component? How do you create a surprise ending? So that came out of all that research as well.
That's incredible, man. I love that you turned this passion and this vision you know, and you even mentioned like you thought you were like making a bet on, you think this could be my dream job, but I'm not sure, but I'm going to try it. And did you feel like when you're telling, I don't know if you have a family or not, but if you've got a significant other and you're saying like, hey, I want to leave my super secure job and I want to go do this. Like, what was that experience like for you and, your family?
Yeah, well, so I do have a family. I got a wife and two boys, and it was a tough decision because I was the only breadwinner at the time. Like I said, in my mid 40s, and so too young to retire and all that kind of stuff. So, I did a couple of things. One is like I said, I didn't just get the idea and then quit my job the next day and hope I would get lucky. I mean, I spent 2.5 years working on that book and getting it published before I quit my job. So I test marketed the idea first, right? I'm not stupid. Right? This is a low odds of success venture I was going on. So I wanted to try before I buy, right? So
That's smart.
I took my time and I did it on the side, nights and weekends, and waited to see if I had some success before I leapt. But I did a number of other things I think that turned out to be smart in hindsight.
Like what?
Like one of them was going to a financial planner and saying, okay, look, here's all my bank accounts. Here's how much money I made for the last 25 years. Everything. You do the math and tell me if doing this is going to be stupid. But most importantly, don't tell me. Tell my wife, right? So I gave him all that stuff. We left him for a couple of weeks. We came back and met with him, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to say a word, but you tell my wife if I'm crazy. And he like basically laid out this financial plan and said, as long as your husband can make like this much money a year for the next 10 or 15 years, you guys will be fine. And it was like a third of the amount of money I was making at P&G.
Wow.
So basically he said, it's not going to be that hard to be successful.
Awesome. Typically, I feel like you get the exact opposite advice because even financial planners, excuse me, sorry about that. Even financial planners, like they want you to keep all your money in the account because like they get commissioned off of the money in management. This financial planner did the exact, like that conversation could have gone one of two ways. He could have totally gone the opposite direction and been like, because my uncle's a big accountant and multimillionaire in the stock market. And anytime I talk about being an entrepreneur, he tells me, don't do it. Stick with your job. Stay 9 to 5. Don't take any risk. They're very risk averse. So that was awesome that this guy knew your dream, knew your vision, and supported it.
So that helped. If you want to know, that there was one final barrier, though, to getting me and my wife over the lack of courage to go do this. And it was actually something my dad told me. So I literally wrote my dad a letter because he was 80 years old at the time and he's hard of hearing now. So I can't call him on the phone and really ask him these questions anymore. But I did write him a letter and I told him what I told you. And I said, look, so I really want to go do this, but I'm kind of scared. I mean, is this like crazy? And I thought, he'd write me back and he'd tell me one or two things, right? He'd either say, oh yeah, go do this, Paul. I believe you, you just go pursue your dream. Or he's going to say, are you nuts? Right? Just like the financial planner told you, like you put your head down, just do your job, keep your nose clean and then retire and then go play around with this funny stuff. And, but he didn't tell me either of those things. He literally just told me a story about himself that I'd never heard before. And neither had any of my siblings. He said, when I was 5 years old, I knew exactly what I wanted to do with my life. He said, I wanted to be a singer, like Frank Sinatra, or Tony Bennett, or Sammy Davis Jr. I mean, that's
incredible.
And he said, and I knew that for sure on the first day of the first grade. He said, because the teacher asked us if anybody had any special talent, like dancing or magic tricks or something. And he said, I raised my hand and I said that I could sing. Well, what do you think the teacher did when he said that?
Get up on stage right now.
Absolutely. Well, okay, Bobby, get up and sing us a song. So literally right then, 5-year-old Bobby Smith stood up and he belted out his favorite song right there, a cappella in front of everybody, right there in class.
Wow.
And he said, I nailed it, right? I got all the words right, all the melody right. He said, I was so proud. When I was done, he said, the teacher and all the students stood up and they applauded me. He said, I got a standing ovation my first time to sing in front of an audience. And he said, that was the moment. I knew for sure this is what I was destined to do with my life. And he went on in this letter to say, Unfortunately, that turned out not just to be the first time I ever sang in front of an audience. It turned out to be the last time I ever sang in front of an audience. And of course, I'm thinking what you're thinking, like, well, why? But this is a letter I'm reading, right? So I can't ask him. But he goes on to say, the truth is, I just never had the courage to go through with it. I grew up and, met your mom and we got married and had babies, got a job, all that kind of stuff. But I really just never had the courage to do it. And he said, someday, you're going to wake up, you're going to be 80 years old like me, and it's going to be too late to pursue your dream. And right then I thought, well, man, that's enough. That's all I needed. But it wasn't enough. I kid you not. He closed the letter with these words. He said, I'd love to see you pursue your dream. But that doesn't mean in your lifetime, son. That means in mine. Oh, and I was just like,
wow. Oh, yeah. He drops the mic on you right then and there, dude. I love that that's so exciting to hear that. Like, I can't believe you've never heard that story before. I can't believe you actually reached out to him to say like, hey, this is like the final checkbox of sanity. Yeah. Tell me, like, am I crazy? Because I feel a little crazy. And anytime you go off and do your own thing, you feel real crazy because everyone's telling you it's the worst idea in the world because you're up against a lot of odds.
Well, he had never told anybody in my family that story before. That was the first time. And that did it absolutely. So literally 2 days later, I walk into my boss's office and I quit my 20-year career to do this. And that was the final straw. So that's what got me. That was 6 years ago. 5 years.
I love that just recently happened. And it was really exciting as he put the time clock on.
Yeah, he did.
Hey,
right?
Before I go, I'm going to put this pressure on you.
Yeah,
and let's get this thing done. And that probably like not only like gave you the check mark of approval, but also pushed you to be like, I got to speed this up because I know he's got X amount of years, and I want to make this happen for him, and so that he could experience. Him being a little boy singing, but through me and my talent.
Exactly. And fortunately, I've gotten to do that. He's actually still with us today, so he's gotten to see the success, and so it's all a good ending.
Wow. So that's amazing, and you end up deciding. What did the financial planner say? Like, how did you map out? What you needed to make and how you were going to make it. Just curious, like at that point in time, like, cause now you got to sell yourself and I think that's a micro secret first. Let's summarize that micro secret. What would you tell the audience right at that point in time where your father tells you about his dream? Like that's a micro secret lesson. And he tells you that.
I think the secret there is that if you are the only one you're going to disappoint by not pursuing your dream, it's probably okay. You're just disappointing yourself. But the truth is, you're probably not the only one who wants to see you achieve your dream. All of us have somebody, a spouse, a child, a parent, in my case, who wants to see you achieve your dream. And if you don't, you're going to disappoint them also, right? So pursue your dream and you're going to make more than one person happy in the process. So I think that's the micro lesson in that one.
Yeah, for sure. And what's great about that is for salespeople, marketers, entrepreneurs, recruiters out there, your dream of whatever you're selling, to the audience, to your personas, to your ideal customers, like if you know that that's going to positively impact them, you go all out. And that's what I do now. When I became a servant leader and a purpose-driven leader personally, I literally every day I wake up and I'm worried that if I do not go all out, I am disappointing my mission to positively impact 1 billion people. I'm not doing this interview for me, for you. I'm doing it for the 1 billion people that rely on this message to change their life. And if we could change one person's life, we've accomplished the mission. And that micro secret speaks to me because like that's how I'm so concerned that the party's going to be over and I'm not going to positively impact 1 billion people.
Well, good. Well, keep at it.
That's incredible. So when it comes to, and people don't care about me, let's focus on you. So, okay, you start now. You get the check boxes. You start. What do you like next year? The next full year being a full-time storyteller, interviewer, expert, or, like probably an analyst, like at the beginning of the, being an expert at this, right? Because you just started it. What was it like? Walk us through that experience. Cause you got to sell people on either telling stories, speaking. Well, you actually had the book though. The book went live, right?
Right. So, I mean, a lot of the stuff you're talking about happened before I left P&G because it was, first thing I had to do is convince a publisher to publish my book.
Yeah.
I mean, that was the first big sales pitch right there. And before that, I had to convince an agent to represent me so that, then she could help me get to sell the idea to the publisher. So a lot of that stuff happened before I ever quit to go do this and getting my first client and my second client. So
let's talk about each of those.
Yeah.
How did you sell the agent? Because you're this nobody.
Yeah.
Like respectfully, obviously.
Oh yeah,
like
absolutely.
I mean,
right.
You're this badass economics and accounting and finance expert and market research expert.
I was nobody
at P&G.
Yeah.
But like that's how these agents view view people like you and me. They're like, this is a new guy. He's never done anything. Like, how did you sell this guy on repping you? Or girl, guy or gal?
It was a woman. So I think salespeople could probably learn a lot from how the publishing industry works. Because I, of course, knew nothing about it until I wrote my first book, right? And I went and read a couple of books just on how the publishing industry works, just to understand it. And it turns out when you want to get a publisher, a real New York City, old school, full service publishing house, not a self-publishing company. Anybody can self-publish, right? You just write a check and they'll publish anything you write. But if you want a real New York City publishing house to publish your book, like 90% of authors that ask that try fail, like they reject. Okay. So they're very selective.
Wow.
So the way they decide, and I read this book to learn how to do that, is they expect authors to send them a book proposal.
Yep.
And a book proposal really is more like a business
plan.
Yeah. So it's just plan, like, an entrepreneur going to a VC firm and wanting $20 million. They want to see your business plan. So you write, what's the concept of the book? Who's the target audience? In other words, the demographic of the customer, right? A detailed outline of the chapters. They want to know what your marketing plan is going to be for the book.
And you're like, damn, I thought you were going to do that.
Yes,
what do you mean my marketing plan?
Yeah. And then a competitive analysis of all the other books on the market that are similar to yours and why does yours deserve to be on the shelf next to theirs? Your qualifications as the author. I mean, all of this, it's like a business plan and you're going to the VC firm. So that process, I think, prepares you to sell anything, right? Because it's a lengthy process. So,
and it's funny because I've pitched VCs, I've pitched tens of thousands of customers, 100 million in deals, and also publishers. And what you're saying just brings me back to like the whole experience that you went through. So, okay, so then you put together the book pitch, right?
Yep.
The outline.
So I went to agents first because I didn't know what I was doing. So I wanted an agent to help me through. So
and what do they do? Like when you talk to them, are they like, I'm going to take a % commission? Like what is going to an agent? And when you say agent, I don't know if you ever saw Entourage. I think of Ari Gold. Like, well, the audience knows like Entourage, Ari Gold is Jeremy Piven, and he's like this guru, sales closer, hustler, works 18 hours a day and just crushes it to rep a celebrity movie star. Like that's what I think when I hear of agent. Like how is that world of pitching them and what do they get? How do they get paid?
Yeah, so maybe it's my genre. So I think of Jerry Maguire. If that's
it's the same type of guy.
Yeah, so that's more. So I have agents that pitch me for speaking engagements, like keynotes and training. A literary agent's very different. Well, I mean, not very. I mean, they're doing something similar, but their job is to sell you to a publisher, not to for speaking engagement. So I'm talking about a literary agent now. So they're much more mild-mannered people. They're not
not like Jerry Maguire.
Books, okay?
That's funny.
Anyway, the way you get an agent is the same way you get a publisher. You got to write that same book proposal, right? So I spent months and months and months working on that book proposal. I finally got it to where I thought it was good. I sent it to my first agent and they said no. Sent it to another agent, they said no. Sent it to a third one, they said no. And by the way, every time they said no, here's another micro secret for you. I asked them why.
Ooh,
and if they wouldn't tell me, I'd ask them again until they just give me one thing that would make this better. And they'd say, oh, your target audience is too narrow. Okay, great. That helps me. Okay. Or your background, you don't look like you've got credibility to write in this space, or you don't have a platform to market it, or, oh, great. Okay. So these are all things that will help me the next time. So I went through 6 agents that told me no. And then the 7th one said maybe. And so, okay, good. All right. Now I got a maybe. Okay.
All right. Yeah, it's not a no, man.
I got my first not no. Okay. So, so they started work. So the owner of the agency assigned me some junior flunky person working for him and said, Sally is going to work with you to make this proposal better, because it's good, but it's not good enough. So he gave me Sally. And for 3 months, Sally and I worked together to make this proposal better. And she pushed me to change all kinds of things about it that I was uncomfortable changing, but honestly made it a better book idea. And I'd send it to her and she'd send it back with, all these marked up and change this and change this. And we went back and forth. 3 months later, we think we had it where it was really, really much better. She sent it back to her boss and he said, that is much better. Still no. Sorry.
Wow. Still no. So she said, was it still a maybe or like a no?
No, it was a hard no now.
So the maybe went from a maybe to a no.
Yeah. The maybe went to a hard no.
Why do you think that happened? Just,
I couldn't point to one particular thing, but he just still didn't think it was good enough. So I took that proposal that I'd spent 3 months working on with her for free, by the way. They didn't charge me a consulting fee.
No one pays you for that to write this stuff. So you got to do it out of pocket.
Well, no. I'm saying they didn't make me pay them to help me make this better.
It's awesome.
There was no money exchanged here, but I took that proposal that I'd spent 3 months working on with her. I sent it to another agent, number 8 now, if you're keeping track. That agent said, oh, I love it. I'll take you as a client. Okay. Right away. Got a yes.
Boom.
Yeah.
Done. Okay. What did you sell? Come on. You had what did you do? Did you open up a bottle of champagne? Did you run around the house?
I'm sure I did. Yeah, because it was easy. I sent it to her and she loved it. Okay. But I'd been working on it for 9 months, right? I'd gone through 7 no's. And by the way, that last no, remember, was a 3-month maybe no. And I got 7 pieces of consulting, free consulting out of each of those no's to make it better. So by the time it went to the 8th one, it was awesome. And she said yes. So then she said, okay, here's what I'm going to do. I got here 8 or 9 or 10 publishers that I'm going to send this to try and get a publishing contract. And I'm going to send it to them one at a time. And I've got them rank ordered in, which I think, the best one and the second best one, et cetera. She sent it to the first one. Within a week, they wrote me a contract. So I had my first publishing contract. First one batted 1,000. Right?
Wow, dude. And that's a micro secret, another micro secret. So ask why first micro. Well, there's a few micro secrets here. Obviously, don't, if you feel so passionate about a dream, go for it. You have to do it. And especially your father validated that, and he gave up on one of his childhood dreams that he'll forever regret, literally forever regret. And luckily he gets to live his dream through Paul, which has got to be even better than him singing anywhere in the world. Number 2, ask why when you fail.
When you get a no.
And what's incredible, you literally this is, I come from advertising and selling and marketing. You literally A/B tested and optimized every no. After you asked why, you improved, and then you pitched, you improved, you pitched. How did you stay? That's a micro secret. So after they asked why, always be optimizing. Always be optimizing whatever you're doing. And then the last micro secret was would you say never give up?
Yeah, I guess. I mean, that's certainly not a surprise to anybody, but I think the reason why it was easy for me to not give up and not get dejected and say, oh, I've already gotten told no 3 times. Obviously this is a lousy idea. I'm just going to go back to my day job, is because I'd done my homework enough to know that was normal in this business, right? I already knew that 90% of authors get told no by their publishers. In other words, 9 out of 10 times you ask for a sale in this business, you get told no. And it's the same ratio with literary agents. 9 out of 10 times they say no to a client. So I knew that I was going to get 9 no's for every 1 yes. So I was just I just need to get to the 10th one fast. So let's go, let's get through these no's. And I got lucky.
That's another micro secret.
Yeah.
Another micro sales secret is I think overestimate the amount of no's that you're going to receive.
Yeah.
It sounds like if I didn't have a 10-year mindset on building our business, Seamless.AI, I would have quit like 1,000 times. But I was lucky to be in this 10-year mindset. I said, I'm going to go all out for 10 years, even if I'm poor living on the streets. This is a vision that I have to build this platform. And it like, so you read the books, right? The education too, because like, what if you didn't read those books that would have taught you to expect the no? Right. And then you could have quit. You could have quit after the third no, the fifth no.
Yeah.
That's another micro secret. If you want to do something, it sounds like you got to read the books. You got to study the field.
Learn the business you want to go into. Right? Because I didn't know anything about the publishing business. So if I hadn't read those books, I wouldn't know how to write a book proposal. And I wouldn't have known to expect to be told no so many times.
Your whole life would have been changed forever.
Yeah.
If you didn't read those books, to fight through the no's, to know how to write the book interview. And then obviously it took a lot of your hard work. Like, dude, you're grinding, while working full time to get this stuff done. That's incredible. So that's a secret. So then you land it, right? And what is like, do they give you like when I hear about people getting book deals and stuff, I just think of a bag of cash. Like literally I see a Louis Vuitton bag of cash. Yeah. Hey, Paul Smith, here's your Louis Vuitton $100,000, $500,000, $1 million book deal with a bag of cash. And I assume there's probably, my vision's probably off. Like, how is it really like, do they give you a ton of money? Do they not give you anything? How does that work?
Yeah, well, so I suppose if I was like, a former president, a Barack Obama or a Bill Clinton or something, that's how it works. But when you're a nobody, it does not work that way. I did get an advance, but it was a very modest advance. And
wasn't going to feed the family forever.
No. I wouldn't even feed the family for a couple of months,
a week. Yeah.
So, but this maybe is another one of your micro secrets. I had to quickly realize and treat it this way, that the book was not my entire business model. It was only a small part of the business of me. Because remember, the reason I wrote the book was because I wanted to get clients to hire me for speaking and training engagements, right?
Love that.
So when I started this out, I tried to not invest more money marketing my book than I thought I would earn in royalties from the book. And that limited me in what I could afford to do marketing the book, because I treated it as in the business world, you'd call that a business unit, right? A self-contained business unit that needs to earn a profit on its own.
Yep. And so you've got this one business unit that's got its own profit and loss statement.
Yeah. And
you're like, I got to run that. I can't keep investing the world into this because that could hurt.
Right.
me.
And that was a mistake. Right. And
oh, wow.
That's what I'm telling you. That was a mistake. And the reason why that was a mistake was because what the book does for me is that's where I get all my intellectual property I put into the book. I mean, I'm doing all this research to create these books.
Yep.
And that's where my intellectual property is, but it's also my number one marketing vehicle for the speaking engagements, right? 70% of the people who hire me to come give a speech or training is somebody who's read one of my books. Yep. So I make 85% of my revenue from speaking and training engagements and only 15% from book royalties. But if I didn't write the books, nobody would hire me to give speeches. So if I treat the books that the books have to make a profit on their own, that's just foolish, because really I need to think
that fuels
my whole business is all of this.
That's your marketing investment that fuels that fuels the speaker. Yes. Wow. That's a hell of a micro secret.
Maybe we'll call that a macro secret. How about? Okay.
That was that big of a failure or learning experience that you went through that you're like, this is a macro.
Yeah.
Like, if you're about to do anything like that, whether it's investing in content, investing in leads, you just go all out with that. Like, don't think small, maybe. How would we define that in a tweet for the chapter?
Yeah, I'm sure you can figure that out later. But the point is, think of your entire business as one big business, and each of these parts plays a different role. The book isn't the profit center. Speaking engagements drive the profit. The book is a cost center. It's my marketing spend, right? So treat it that way. Don't treat it like it's got to earn its own, So anyway,
that's incredible, man. So then, you're successful with getting the book written, and well, you had to interview everyone, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
For the book?
Yeah. So here's maybe another.
Let's walk through this. And this is interesting because we're doing the exact type of book that Paul's doing, but ours is about sales secrets from the world's top sales experts like Paul. So this is a unique interview where Paul has interviewed all these top sales experts. And how was that experience?
Yeah. So here's the question, the official question that you can say you just asked me that I'm going to answer. So here's the question I'm going to pretend you just asked is, how did you get these hundreds of CEOs and executives who didn't know you, who are very busy, to spend an hour or two on the phone with this nobody? Right?
And this is the question. Yeah.
Okay. So
that's the question I should ask. Go.
Here's the answer. I'll just put you on the spot. Let's say I called you out of the blue and you didn't know who I was, right? Yep. And I said, hey, Brandon, look, I know you don't know me, but I've always wanted to write a book, and so I'm trying to interview really important people like you, and I know you're really busy, and gosh, I don't know if this is going to get published or if I'm just wasting your time or not, but I really just hope you'd spend some time with me and let me interview. What would you say?
Dude, no time. And it's funny because I get these requests all the time. I'm sure you do, and there's no time.
Right. In fact,
there's no time.
If you're really a big shot CEO, I wouldn't even get through to you. Your secretary would field that phone call and she'd tell me to go pound sand, right?
Totally. 1000%.
Okay. Now, what if you got this phone call? Hey, Brandon, my name's Paul Smith. I'm under contract with HarperCollins Leadership Publishing to write a book on leadership that's going to get published in the fall. I'm looking for strong leaders at successful companies to feature in the book. Would you have an hour to spend on the phone with me? What would you say, Brandon?
Wow. That is such a strong pitch.
Yeah. Okay.
A strong story.
Right. So the difference between those two is this, is I already have a publishing contract. That was the difference. It's not a pipe dream of mine. I'm still the same nobody in both cases, right? The difference is in the second case, I'm already under contract to write a book by a reputable, well-known publisher. The book's going to get published in the fall with or without you in it. And it's a book about leadership and you think you're a badass leader.
Yeah.
So this book's going to be published, whether you're in it or not. Do you want to be in it? Who's going to say no? And I'll tell you who. Nobody. Right? Well, actually, 7% of people. So
7%.
I had a 93% success rate getting executives to interview with me.
That is insane. So how did you learn or know, and I love this because our audience are salespeople and marketers and entrepreneurs trying to pitch people, and mainly salespeople. How did you know not to go the first former sales script
I didn't.
And to go the second route?
I didn't. I only started interviewing people after I got the book contract. So I realized, though, that's why it was working so well, because my agent and my publisher and my editor wanted me to interview all these people for the book. I just wanted to interview a few people that I knew and base it on a lot of my own work experiences. And they're like, no. That's not a big enough idea. You need to have, interview a lot of important people. And my response was, well, how am I ever going to get them to interview with me? I'm a nobody. But they convinced me to try it anyway, and I did, and I had that 93% success rate. And I'm convinced the reason why is because I already had the publishing contract.
That's unbelievable. So you literally went with that script from the beginning. Mm-hmm. Like you didn't salespeople, we're always writing scripts, optimizing scripts, A/B testing. The first script, you just nailed it.
Yeah. Well, yes. So I got lucky. So I learned that I figured that out after the fact that's why. And it's just because I think it's obvious that's the reason why, because and I know just from a little thought experiment that there's no way 93% of those executives would have interviewed me under that first 93%. Script. All I could have said before I got the contract.
And when you booked appointments with the world's most successful CEOs and executives, and you could take a video of let's bring Paul Smith into it. So when you got all these executives for you to interview them, that's literally like a cold prospecting pitch. They don't know you, but you came out with that beautiful, strong sales email pitch. Who did you reach out to? I'm dying to know. The audience is dying to know. Let's pretend they haven't read Sell with a Story or Lead with a Story. Who are some of the executives that you locked down for this?
So how I got to them, like everything you might imagine, I started with the people that I know. And so I was 45 years old at the time. I'd spent 15 or so years at Procter & Gamble. I'd gotten my MBA from the Wharton School. So those two things, P&G and Wharton, I was fortunate enough to have colleagues that end up being very successful in life, So if you look in your Rolodex, and the modern day Rolodex is LinkedIn, right? You'll realize that, unless you're 21 years old and right out of college, it turns out you know a lot more people than you think. And if you're as old as I was at the time and have been fortunate enough to been to places that tend to churn out successful people like I was fortunate enough to be at.
Yeah, because you went to Wharton, right?
Yeah. And so you end up meeting and having gone to school with and working with people that are now very successful. So one of the guys that sat next to me in my, marketing class at Wharton ended up being the CEO of Kellogg's. And the woman at Procter & Gamble who gave me my first big promotion went on to be the CEO of Dun & Bradstreet. And, so your Rolodex.
That is insane. That's a massive Rolodex.
But I don't think it's unusual. I think if once you get into your mid 40s, mid career, you've met and worked with thousands of people. And so I got onto LinkedIn and I started looking up all the people that I went to school with and worked with over the course of my career. And I was like, holy moly, these people are all a lot smarter than me and a lot more successful. And they're, have these incredible careers. And so I started with them.
Oh yeah. So you started with your network of influence to lock down these top performing leaders and executives first.
Right. So that was step one. So that's your micro lesson number one. Micro lesson number two was the last question I asked in every interview was the same. And it was this: now that you know the kind of questions I'm asking and the kind of stories I'm looking for, who do you think I should interview next? And that always got me 3 or 4 or 5 new people to add to my list that I didn't know about before. Right? So that one thing leads to another. So I ended up, most of the people I interviewed were not people I knew.
Yeah. Wow. And they were able to, so the people in your influence, so you said the CEO of Kellogg, the CEO of Dun & Bradstreet, massive. They're an investor in my company. I love that. That's awesome. The first few executives. What are some other top executives within the first 50 that you were able to sell to and lock in?
Obviously several of the leaders, current and former leaders at Procter & Gamble, but I ended up with people from Microsoft and Huntington Bank and Abercrombie and Fitch. And so a lot of well-known companies. Not all of them were big well-known.
How much time did you have with these people?
1 to 2 hours each.
And you're learning. You literally are interviewing the world's best CEOs and executives.
Yeah. It's a humbling experience.
You've interviewed you said over 400, 400 minimum executives and CEOs and sales leaders.
Yeah. Between probably 300 for the books and maybe 100 or so across the podcast I've done. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you got the 3 best-selling books: Lead with a Story, Sell with a Story, Parenting with a Story. And then you've got the 3 podcasts that are the same title of the books.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Were you nervous? Okay, so now you get the CEO locked in, loaded, right? Now you're going into the pitch, which it would for you would be this interview.
Yeah.
How did you not blow that, right? How did you not?
So that was probably easier than a lot of the other things that we've talked about so far for a couple of reasons. One is when you're interviewing somebody, you're not pitching anything. You're asking people to tell you about stuff. And the stuff you're asking them to tell you about is either themselves or something they know a lot about, which is easy for people to do. In fact, they want to do it. People love to tell stories. B, especially if those stories are about themselves. People like to talk about themselves, right?
Right.
So that was an easy ask. And when I'm asking you to tell me about something that's not you, I'm asking for you to tell me about something that you know a lot about. So you get to, share your wisdom. And who doesn't love to, pontificate a little bit and share their worldly wisdom with other people? So the interview is really I felt like a lot easier. Now I'd spent, 12 of my 20 years at P&G as a consumer researcher. So I had some experience, in focus groups and interviewing consumers. So that certainly helped a little bit, but I found the interviews far easier than a sales pitch.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, I can totally agree. Just doing this, this is our almost 75th interview, and the lucky part is I am all in on sales. Mm-hmm. So I'm so hungry to learn, to share with our audience and positively impact 1 billion, that I want the knowledge. So I'm going to ask everything that I want to know.
Right.
Salespeople are dying, and marketers and entrepreneurs are dying to get these secrets out of you. So luckily, it's just something that I've always wanted to learn. What did you learn? So you've got 3 different audiences. You've got the CEOs, you've got the executives. We'll just say the CEO executives, and then you've got the sales leaders.
Yep.
What did you learn? These micro secrets, what were the themes, or what did you learn? The stories, right? And you said there's 21 different types of stories, or did you say that there was all different types of stories earlier?
Yeah. So for the sales folks, I ended up documenting what I think are 25 specific types of sales stories. And I didn't just interview salespeople. So I interviewed professional buyers as well, professional procurement managers. And,
Interesting.
Who better to tell you what sales stories work and which ones don't than professional buyers who listen.
Buyers that get to hear all the pitches. That's so ingenious. Shit. Exactly. I thought you would have just interviewed the salespeople.
Right.
You interviewed the buyers that were getting pitched all day. So you got their perspective.
So I did both. And at the end of the research, I concluded that I think I learned more from the buyers than the salespeople. And for exactly the reason that you're suspecting over there, is because they're the ones that make the decision, that gets to decide what's a good sales pitch and what's not. And I went into it assuming that salespeople would be telling stories really only in the rapport building phase, and then when they're actually making the sales pitch. And they do, but they're also telling it in all those other phases of the sales process as well. And I didn't expect that. The moment they're introducing themselves to people, and also stories to handle objections and negotiate price. Stories to actually close the sale, to create a sense of urgency to close the sale now instead of later. Loyalty building stories, stories to tell after the sale has been closed, just to make sure that they come back and are a repeat loyal customer. So the book documents all 25 specific stories, but they fall into those buckets, all across the 6 or 7 pages.
I got to ask, because again, I'm looking out for me and I'm looking out for the audience, right? You got to list out, dude. Give us the top 20. Walk us through quickly the 25 different stories. We got to hear this.
All right. So at the beginning, stories to explain what you do simply, right, or to explain who you've helped and how you've helped them. So these are examples, just enough to get people to say, "Oh yeah, I might need that. We should talk." Right. Okay. Then I found a couple of really weird ones, which were stories that salespeople were telling themselves, not stories they were telling buyers. But these were really to two types. One is a personal motivation story.
Yep.
A story to give them motivation to go take on the day and do well today. And then another one was a type of story they were telling themselves to relax and take the stress out of the next sales call.
Interesting.
I didn't expect that, but selling is hard. It's an emotionally difficult thing to do, right?
So hard.
So that was really interesting. In the rapport building phase, that was where the most of the storytelling, a lot of it was going on. So there were several types there.
So it was all about, let's just recap this specific section. So you said evoke a desire, interest.
I'll send you a whole list, so you don't have to go mad taking notes right here, but I'll send you the list of 25. But yeah, it's explaining what you do simply.
Okay.
So I give stories a name that tells you what the story is about. So story number 1 is explaining what you do simply.
Love it.
That's the title of the story.
Simple. Be simple.
Story number 2 is who I've helped and how I've helped them. Okay, that's number 2.
We help X do Y.
Right.
Who you help and how.
Yeah. But it's actually a story about you doing it, not just we install windows and doors. Okay. No, that's a benefit statement. Okay, well, last month I went to Bob's house and he had a window got broken during the storm, and I went in and I did this. You're telling a story about it. Okay.
Yeah.
The number 3 is the personal motivation story. Number 4 is the story to relax and take the stress out of a sales call. So I call it the to relax and take the stress out of sales call story. Okay. Not very sexy, but it tells you what the story's about, right?
Yep.
So then you're into the rapport building phase. And the first one there, so number 5 is why I do what I do. That's the name of the story. It's a story you tell to explain to your prospect. It's kind of the Simon Sinek thing. Nobody cares about what you do until they know why you do it.
I love that.
You need a story to explain why you care so much about the thing you do for a living. Number 6 is I'll tell you when I made a mistake story so that you can trust me that if I screw up, I'm going to let you know about it. Number 7 is it's kind of the Macy's Miracle on 34th Street story. It's I'll tell you when I can't help you story. It's a story
go ahead. What does that mean?
It's a story to let them know that if I'm not the best solution for what you need, I'll tell you so you can go somewhere else.
I love that.
That way, when I do tell you I'm the best solution for you, believe me, because I'm the guy that will tell you when I'm not, right?
That's like a trust and credibility story.
Yeah,
Got it.
So number 8 is an I'll go to bat for you I'll go to bat for you story. So it's a story to prove that, look, if I got to go fight some battles back at my company headquarters to do right by you, I will. You can't just promise people you'll do that. You got to tell them a story about a time you did that for somebody else so they'll believe you. So that's why it's a story. All these are stories, not just statements. Okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. Number 9.
The next one is I'm not who you think I am story. So
interesting. What does that mean?
Salespeople have a bad reputation, right? Just in general. Right?
I hate that.
Car salesman type shtick, right?
Yeah.
So if you know you're going to go into a new prospect and they already have bad preconceived notions about you, this is a story you tell to disabuse them of that notion right off the bat. So they don't think that you're that bad guy that they're expecting to come in, right? Number 10, now you're starting to talk about, those are all about you personally. Then you need to tell some stories about your company. So number 10 is your company's founding story, right? How did your company start in the basement of, your founders, whatever. I mean, everybody needs to be able to tell the founding story of their company. Number 11 is how we're different from our competitors story. So it's basically a marketing story, a story about how your company does something for customers versus how your competitors do, so that your prospect can see, oh yeah, I like the way you do it better. I want to go with you. Right.
Wow.
All right, so now that's called rapport building. Yep. So now you're into the sales pitch. So number 12 is your product's invention or discovery story. So if your company only does one thing, only sells one product, then this is the same story as your founding story. But most companies have lots of products, lots of different services. And so it's kind of the founding story of just this particular product that you're pitching today. Right?
Got it. Okay.
Then number 12 is, I call it number 13, explaining the problem story. It's a story. It's the quintessential story of somebody who has a problem that your product or service solves, right? So,
like a relatable persona.
Yeah.
And
so it's so that
this was the pain, and then this was, the
it's
deep
not the
pain.
solution yet, but this is the pain. This is a story about the pain that you might be having. And if you do, I've got the solution to that problem.
Wow. Right? I love that. Okay.
Number 14 is the solution.
Makes sense.
Customer success story basically is what number 14 is. Everybody's got to have one of those.
Yep.
And then number 15 is a combination of those two, a problem and a success story. When you put those together, it's really powerful.
Like a case study almost, before and after.
Yeah, exactly. Before and after. Here's the problem. Now let me tell you a story about how we solved that. Right.
So good.
And then 16 is an interesting one. I call it a value adding story. So it's the kind of story that literally makes the product or service you're selling more valuable to a customer. And I can give you an example of that later.
Yeah, quickly. Like when you say,
yeah. So my wife and I were at an art fair looking for some art for our kids' bedroom at home, or the bathroom at home, and we came to this booth of this underwater photographer named Chris Goog, and he just takes these mesmerizing underwater pictures.
Sounds beautiful, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
So, and she gets attached to this picture he's got that to me looked about as out of place as a pig in the ocean. And the reason was because it literally was a picture of a pig in the ocean. Literally.
Oh, dude, I swam with those in the Bahamas.
Exactly.
Was that yes. I swam. I did that.
At Big Major K in the Bahamas.
At Big Major K in the Bahamas. Yes. I've done that. That's amazing.
So I'd never heard of Big Major K. Yeah, so it's a real thing, right? So you know this.
Oh, dude, I was there with my fiance. Yeah, we've done that.
So I'd never heard of that. So to me, that picture was just crazy, right? To you, it would have made total sense, but it made no sense
when
to
I
me.
saw it literally for the first time. You see all these pigs running all over the place in the ocean. Yeah. It looks nuts, but they live on that little island. They literally live there. Right. I'm like, Pigs live on an island in the Bahamas?
Right. Well, so you tell me if this is the same story that you heard when you were there. But so I had to ask him, I don't get it. I don't, this is just crazy. It's a stupid picture. Pigs don't swim, right? And he said, oh yeah, it was crazy. He said, apparently what he'd heard is a few years earlier, some local entrepreneur around Big Major K decided to start a pig farm for bacon, I guess. And he found this island, Big Major K, that was uninhabited where he could keep the pigs for free. So he's no dummy. So he puts them there, keeps them for free. But then the guy says, well, look in the picture I took. Look up back behind the pig up on the beach, and what kind of vegetation do you see? And I kind of squinted, and I looked up there, and I was like, I don't see anything but cactus up there. And he says, yeah, that's a problem. Right? Pigs don't eat cactus. Right?
Nope.
He said, so literally these pigs had nothing to eat.
Yeah.
And he said, fortunately, apparently what happened was a local restaurant owner on a neighboring island was boating his kitchen refuse over to Big Major K and dumping it overboard a few dozen yards offshore every night, right? Just to clean the kitchen out. Well, pretty soon these pigs, they get hungry enough. You know, you get hungry enough, you'll do anything. So even though they don't normally swim, one little pig, like dog paddle or pig paddled his way out there to get the food. Yep. And then 2 little piggies and 3 little piggies. And he said, you know, here it is 3 generations later, and all the pigs on Big Major K can swim. So I was like, oh, how cool is that? I got to have it, right? So I bought that picture for whatever he was willing to charge me for it because of that story. Because if he hadn't told me that story, it was just some stupid picture of a pig in the ocean, right? But now I was not just buying a picture, I was buying a story that had a picture with it, right?
The value add with the story.
Stories like that actually make the thing you're selling more valuable. Okay, so that's number 16.
That's incredible, and yes, that is the true story with the pigs in the.
All right, there you go. All right, from a guy who's actually been there. Good.
Yeah, it's funny. I went there like at 25. That's so funny.
So now you're after making the sales pitch. Now you're into the resolving objections or handling objections.
Okay,
and so
sweet.
Number 17 is just a story to resolve whatever objection your buyer just came up with. So instead of a fact or a figure, actually tell them a story that will help them realize, oh, that's not going to be a problem after all. Okay.
Interesting. So like if I say like, well, it's too expensive, or I don't know we don't feel like we're getting the right return on investment or whatever, you're saying you have to come up with a story for all the sales objections to make them feel confident, to make them feel that they're making the right decision by going with you versus letting that objection like stall or kill the deal.
Right. Because an objection is not just a fact. An objection is a bad story playing out in the mind of the buyer. Right? They think if I buy this product, here's all the bad things that are going to happen. It's a story. You can't replace a bad story with a fact. You have to replace it with a better story. So your response would be, yeah, you know what? A lot of my customers think that's going to be a problem too. Let me tell you how that normally pans out. And you tell them a story about somebody who had that same objection. They bought from you anyway, and it turned out not to be a problem.
Wow. That is brilliant.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it's too expensive. And then you tell that story of another customer,
too expensive, and turned out not to be. It turned out to be worth it, right?
Yeah, and all the ROI and the revenue, and I love overcoming. No one ever tells you to like this is a big one. Story to resolve whatever objection they throw at you, and use this story to address the objection. So instead of saying like, "Hi, John, yes, a lot of customers said that, but you'll make a lot of money," you're saying, "Dude, come up with a badass story with another customer that said the exact same thing." To overcome that objection.
Exactly.
That's so good.
And the next one is specifically about price, because price is a typical objection, but it's the same type of story specifically about price, right? And then
what do you mean? Hold on, you can't bypass that one, because this is like critical for salespeople. Like, how would you use this story? You tell me it's too expensive. Well, I guess this is very similar to number 17, right? Or
it is specific to price as an objection, as opposed to some other quality, delivery speed, whatever else it is. I don't like the color of your hair.
Yep. Brandon, I don't like that you wear a vest, whatever it is, right? Yeah, I totally get it.
This is a price objection.
And then would you want to make that story about like revenue results, ROI, whatever they're trying to reduce? Maybe it's increase in savings. Like you tell that story and then you tie it to the tangible.
You could, and most people will. I mean, my favorite example is actually from a modeling and talent agency, though, and the objection that the owner of that company typically gets around price is, I don't want to pay up front. I want to pay on the back end, because that's
This
what
is a
most
good
people
one.
do in this industry. If if I'm going to come to you as a modeling and talent agency, if you get me a gig with L'Oreal or whatever, then I'll give you a commission after I get paid. And the Excel Models and Talent in Little Rock, Arkansas, is the founder of that company, Melissa Moody, that I interviewed. She charges her clients up front, which is very different than most of the industry. So she always gets that objection right up front. Is wait, time out. I don't want to pay anything up front.
Makes sense.
What she does is tells them a story about, Christine, one of her students a few years ago, whose mom, this is a 14-year-old girl, so mom came with her. Mom had the same objection. I want to pay on the back end. And she, so anyway, she says, she tells them about Christine. She said, Christine came here. Her mom had the same objection. Christine was one of my best students, took her to all the fashion shows. She came in second place out of 1,500 young ladies, started getting contract offers right and left, she had to fly to New York, get in a cab, go to, she had 3 or 4 offers she was going to consider before signing a contract. On the way to the first one, she calls me from the cab and she's in tears. And I'm like, Christine, what's the problem? You're like my best student. What's the matter? And she's like, Christine, I don't want to be a model. I never wanted to be a model. My mom wanted me to be a model. And she's crying, right? And I wanted to go into business. I want to be like you. I want to start my own business, be an entrepreneur. But making my money on my looks is something I never wanted. She's just bawling her eyes out. And so as Melissa's telling this story to a new prospect who's having this objection, she pauses and she said, now, if I did business like my competitors and charged on the back end instead of the front end, here's what I would have said to Christine. I'd have said, Christine, I got $15,000 in 6 months invested in you, and I need to get my money back. So you need to get your butt in that office and sign those contracts so I can get paid. That's what I would have told Christine. But because I charged Christine and her mom up front, here's what I actually told Christine. Christine, come home, pursue your dream. And that's exactly what Christine did. So she can tell her clients, look, your daughter can get screwed very easily in this industry unless she's working with me. And that will not happen because my best interest and your daughter's best interest are aligned. All right. So now you want to pay up front instead of on the back end because it's better for you. So the story lets the client know, the prospect know, I charge what I charge because it's good for you that I charge this way. Not me, but you.
Yeah. And that story too, how can you argue with that story after you hear it?
Right.
Do you know what her close rate is on leveraging that type of story?
No, but that's the one that's the most effective. Sometimes she'll say things like, well, look around, look at all the chairs and the desks and the furniture. I'm running a real business here. How do you think I pay for that? I got to charge you up front. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. And so she's got another little trick. She sometimes says, oh, well, what do you do for a living? Oh, well, I'm a tax accountant. Oh, great, because I need my taxes done this year. Now, I don't want to pay you anything up front, but if you get me a refund, I'll give you a percentage on the back end. How about that? Well, no, I don't work that way. Well, then why should I? Yeah. So that sometimes works, but the Christine story, it works. That's her big gun. She knows it works better than those others.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. And then what's the next one? So obviously that's a price objection. Then what's number 19?
I think that was 19. So now we're after handling objections. Now we're into closing the sale.
Okay.
So number 20, I think, and I'll send you the list later, but number 20 is in closing the sale, creating a sense of urgency, right? So it's a story about what will happen bad if you wait. Right. So this is when you've basically made the sale and the response is, hey, that all sounds great. I know I need it. I can afford it, but now's not the right time. Come back in 6 months. It'll be a better time for me. You need to tell a story right then about somebody else who waited and regretted it.
Interesting.
Right? Oh man, if I'd only bought 6 months ago when you first came in here, all these bad things wouldn't have happened. That's the kind of story you need to tell at that moment to create a sense of urgency to buy now.
Love that. That's a good one.
Yep. Number 21 is for when you're not going to be in the room when the decision is finally made, which happens a lot for salespeople, right? Like the board of directors has to make this decision, or the president and the leadership team, and you only get to visit with the buyer or something. And this is a multi-million-dollar decision. So you need a story, and it could be really any of these types of stories, but you need a good, short, memorable story to tell your sponsor that they can go in and repeat that story in front of the decision maker.
Yep.
So basically one of your best sales stories, but it needs to be a real story and really short and really memorable, right?
Do you have an example for that one? Like,
So I do, but it's a little bit longer and it's in a really odd industry. That's
okay. No worries. No worries. We'll add it to Cliff Notes. All good.
Yeah. So number 22 is coaching the breakup. And this is one I did not expect to find.
Interesting. Coaching the breakup.
Yeah. So for a lot of salespeople, if you're successful getting your buyer to buy from you, now they have to stop buying from somebody else, right? They got to fire somebody, right? Now in some industries, a lot of industries, you've been buying from the same supplier for years. Like they're friends of yours.
Yeah. Like almost like family.
Yeah. Like how are you going to fire them to take on this new Yahoo that just gave you a fancy sales pitch? It's hard. So this would be a story about how some of your other clients have an easy way to tell their existing suppliers you're fired without creating a scene, without getting all upset, without creating an enemy. But so whatever you've seen them do that's effective, tell a story about that so that your new prospect will not have to worry about firing their current supplier because, you just taught me an easy way to do it. Right? So that takes us through closing.
That's incredible. Yep.
Yeah. Then after the sale, there's 2 or 3 there that I think are really interesting. Number 23 is basically telling stories about your other current customers and how they're taking advantage of how they're using your products successful. Like you pick your best customers who love your product and use it for all kinds of interesting, creative ways. Tell your newest clients about that so that they can become your most, your best clients, right? So they can learn from these other best clients.
Got it. That's like a success story. Yeah.
Loyalty building stories is the next one. And those are similar to that. But think of them as like Nordstrom's, like some of these companies that have this crazy over the top service, whatever your best customer service stories are, tell them to your newest clients, not your newest prospects, but the ones that you just closed a sale with. Tell them about that so they can be, oh yeah, I want me some of that, right?
That's awesome.
That now that I'm in.
Yeah, I also think of Apple. Like Apple always gives me a delightful experience with everything.
Yes.
From buying to customer success. Like if I call in, they take care of me. Amazon, the first company, number 1, I think, in my customer success stuff, dude. Anytime I have a problem with Amazon, they take care of it right away. But they never told me that. No, they tell you that with like free shipping, but they don't see. That's the difference between telling a story versus free shipping. If Amazon would have told me, hey, you were trying on some clothes, you were buying this new piano for your daughter, hey, let me tell you about Sally who bought this big thing. We shipped it. You had to put it together. And then it doesn't fit the room. And oh my gosh, you're devastated.
Yep.
I think of that story. Yeah.
Yep. So let me take this last one. I just realized, Brandon, I have my own sales call that I'm now late for. So
I'm so sorry.
The last thing. The last one is summarize the call. It is a story that you tell your peers in the company about the awesome sales call you just had or the phenomenal failure, right, that you just suffered, so that they will not repeat the bad mistake you just made, or they can follow the successful path that you just set. So it's basically teaching your peers about your best and worst sales experiences.
That's amazing. And would you say your top sales secret, because I know you have to run, top sales secret?
It's tell stories. Don't just make sales pitches.
Tell stories. Don't make sales pitches. This has been incredible. And you gave us 25 secrets on how to tell stories versus sales pitches. I wrote them all down. You told me not to, but I just love that. And where can people, I know you've positively impacted me, my team. You're about to positively impact hundreds of thousands of others with the book and everything that you already do with your 3 books. Where can people follow you, connect with you, subscribe with you for more?
Yeah, so great. The easiest place is my website, which is leadwithastory.com.
Leadwithastory.com. Paul Smith, thank you so much for joining us. Best-selling author, keynote speaker, business storytelling, and leadership trainer. Paul Smith shares his top sales secret, Lead with a Story. Connect with him at leadwithastory.com. And thank you so much for tuning in, everyone, to this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%, where the world's best sales experts share their secrets to sales success. Order a copy of the book at secretsalesbook.com, secretsalesbook.com. That's secretsalesbook.com. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Sales Secrets from the Top 1%. We release new episodes every Monday and Thursday, so make sure you subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube to never miss an episode.